Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Tyranids. We've got another unit review for you today. This time we're going to be looking at one of the infantry units, none other than the Genestealers. So we're going to see how the new codex has affected this data card, and we're going to give a Planet 40k rating at the end of the video. Now just to kind of clarify something, these Planet 40k ratings are just my personal rating, no more than that. I'm just a Tyranid player just like yourselves, but if you have a different rating to mine, let me know down in the comments below. Right, let's get on to the actual datasheet statistics. We've got a movement of 8 inches, we've got toughness 4, 5+ armor save, 2 wounds, leadership 7+, and the OC is 1 with a 5+ invulnerable save as well. Now previously, these guys used to have 1 wound in 9th edition. Of course, we've had the index after 9th edition, so maybe that isn't that relevant anymore. But yeah, 2 wound models. They're only toughness 4 with a 5+ armor, 5+ invuln. 2 wounds, it does help them of course, but they still can go down to a stiff breeze if they are targeted. Now as for their points, how much are you paying for this kind of stat line? Well, it's 85 points for 5 or 170 points rather for 10. You've got those 2 options there. This is 10th edition. So that is the price. What about the keywords? So they've got the infantry keyword of course, Great Devourer, and they've got the Vanguard Invader keyword as well, which will relate to one of the actual detachments that we'll talk about later in this video. Ability wise, well, Scout 8 inches, which is their core ability from the core rules. So when you actually, before the actual first turn begins, they get to move 8 inches, and that's pretty good because it can get you closer to no man's land objectives or just further afield, I suppose. The unique ability is Vanguard Predator. So each time a model in this unit makes an attack, you reroll hit rolls of a 1. And if the target is within range of an objective, you get to reroll win rolls of 1 as well. Now this has actually recently changed with the codex, which I didn't actually spot until after a recent video I did. Because they used to have you reroll your win rolls of a 1, and if you're on an objective or if they're on an objective, you get to reroll the whole win roll. So they've actually changed that to hit rolls of a 1 and on an objective win rolls of a 1. Which, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, a lot of people have said that's a nerf. I quite like the idea of re-rolling hits, but they do hit on 2s, which we're going to go over in a moment. So it's kind of good and bad at the same time. So yeah, let's go over their actual weaponry. They've only got a melee weapon, of course, Genestealer Claws and Talons. 4 attacks per Genestealer, weapon skill 2+, and you're re-rolling in 1s. Strength 4, -2 AP and 1 damage. Now, they've got a bit of AP, but they've lost a bit of AP since 9th edition. Again, it's not that relevant anymore, let's forget about that. But if you've got 10 Genestealers and you're going up against Guardsmen as an example, that's an easy comparison to make, and all 10 get in, you're likely killing 26 Guardsmen because the AP is doing pretty good, the strength is high enough. Lovely, it's very good against toughness 3 1 wound models. Going up against Space Marine, just still doing a fair amount. You're getting rid of 6.5 Space Marines. The strength is, well, it's on par, so you need 4s to wound. But the -2 AP is doing bits, and the sheer amount of attacks as well. Terminator wise, you're killing 1.5 Terminators, which they're now toughness 5. They've got the invuln, it's a little bit more trickier. And of course, all these are, if they're not even on an objective. If they're on an objective, you get to reroll your win rolls of a 1 as well. So it does get better from there. But as an actual damage output, I think that's okay. That's pretty decent. Now synergy wise, of course, you can get the leader, which is the Broodlord. They've got the leader ability, and they'll be going with Genestealers. And this unlocks something else for them, which you could actually add to those stats, which is devastating wounds. So while this model is leading the unit, they gain devastating wounds, which is the vicious insight ability he has. Now he's also going to assist the unit even further with a hypnotic gaze. So an enemy unit in the fight phase, basically they get a -1 to their hit roll. So that's going to be a -1 to hit your Genestealer unit with the Broodlord in. That will help with their durability even more. So all in all, I think the Broodlord is a pretty decent leader for your Genestealer. Well, he's the only leader option, but I think he's worth taking. Unless you're going with like min units maybe, then I would consider not bothering. But if you're going with 10, which is the way I personally would play them, always take the Broodlord. Other bits of synergy, you've got the Psychophage with the 6+ Feel No Pain save. Because they've already got an invuln, they don't need an invuln. But the Feel No Pain save, they can definitely do with. You've got the High Tyrants with the Will of the the what's it called, Will of the Hive Mind. I nearly said mine will be done. I need to really stop doing that. Will of the Hive Mind. Of course, this only works with battle tactic stratagems now, like command reroll and whatever other stratagem you've got, that a battle tactic within each detachment. So it's all dependent on which one you're using, I suppose. We're not going to go through every single one. You can then get your Venom Thropes, of course, which will provide the benefits of cover as well as stealth. So it'll be a +1 to your save, and it's also a -1 to hit as well. I mean, the Broodlord did give the -1 to hit at range, and the Venom Thropes will give it... No, sorry, the Broodlord gave it a -1 to hit in melee, and the Venom Thropes would give a -1 to hit at range. So you can get it in both areas there, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that's all the main sort of synergy I wanted to highlight. But now I want to talk about the key detachment for the Genestealers. That's a new sort of section we're doing in these videos now, the key detachment. Of course, these guys can go in pretty much any detachment. Are they going to work that well in a Crusher Stampede? I mean, they can go in, but they're not going to gain any buffs and bonuses or stratagems and stuff. Unending Swarm, they can be used, but you're not going to gain any buffs and bonuses and stuff. Whereas with the Vanguard Onslaught detachment, they will, because they've got the Vanguard Invader keyword. So that's the detachment we're going to be talking about, and it just happens to be my preferred option at this moment in time. So the Questing Tendrils, which is their detachment role, gives them the ability to fall back and recharge, and if they're Vanguard Invaders, which they are, they can also advance and charge, which is super cool. Bearing in mind they've already got Scout 8 inch, you can then advance, well no, you're moving first 8 inches, you're then advancing up to 6, and then you're charging up to 12. It's a great alpha strike. I mean, it almost reminds me of like High Fleet Kraken from, was it 8th edition, when they were just rapid. They just went up the board like 3d6 and then advance and charge, all the crazy stuff. It really reminds me of that. And it's almost like having fight first as well, because if you're making the charge move, and then if there's another phase in your turn where you're going to be still fighting, you can fall back and then recharge. So it's not quite like fight first, because obviously in your opponent's turn you're not fighting first, but in your turn you will be. In fact, let me take that back. In your opponent's turn you will be fighting first, because defenders fight first. Get it right. So you're pretty much fighting first with that ability. That's really good. Some key stratagems and other buffs that come from this detachment. You've got a battle tactic stratagem right here, so this will help with the Hive Tyrant. It'll be free if you used it with this. Assassin Beasts, and you can give a Vanguard Invader infantry unit the Precision ability, which is wild. The entire unit, which has 40 attacks plus the Broodlord attacks, have Precision. That's not precision on 6s, that's just straight precision. So every attack you've got from that unit, you can start to allocate after you've done the wound roll. Your opponent will have to take it on characters and then carry on to the rest of the unit. So that's really good. I mean, assassination in itself can be done quite easily with that alone. You've got hypersensory cilia in your opponent's movement phase, just after they've ended a normal move, advanced move, or fallback move. Up to 2 Vanguard Invader units from your army that are within 9 inches of that enemy unit can make a normal move up to 6 inches. So you can use them to maybe move behind a terrain feature just after your opponent's done their movement. So therefore, when their shooting phase comes up, they're kind of all of a sudden out of dodge. Or maybe you could just get onto an objective and you've got more OC, which will relate to some of their secondaries that they're going to score in their turn at the end of their turn. And this does cost 2 CP, but you've got a bit of flexibility with it. You've got Unseen Lurkers as well, which is another one for a Vanguard Invader unit, which is what they are. And effectively, they pretty much just gain lone operative. If they can't be targeted at range unless they're within 12 inches. Now they probably will be, to be honest with you, because these things have got scout, advanced charge, and all that. So they probably will. But if there's a unit firing from quite a far, like 36-inch range or something, some heavy bolters or something, then it will help. It will help. What else we got? In fact, we've got one more to talk about. Invisible Hunter. That's another good one where you can literally remove them from the battlefield in your end of your opponent's fight phase, virtually the end of their turn. And you can put them in strategic reserves, so you can move them around the battlefield and pop them on a table edge on your next turn, which is just about to come up. So lots of flexibility with the stratagems, which I like. Battlefield role-wise, well, what do we do with the Genestealers at the moment? For me, there's kind of 2 main roles that they've got. They're either a first wave of an attack, ideally with a full unit of 10 and a Broodlord. You could even have 2 units flanking. When you've got your scout move, scout 8 inch, you then got your movement, your advance, your charge. That potentially is a first turn charge. And it could be, again, 2 units, could even be 3 units. That's what I would be doing with them, personally. But if you wanted to go sort of min unit size, like units of 5 without the Broodlord, you can put them into... You can scout them, obviously. I was going to say infiltrate them. I keep getting that mixed up. That's old edition. You obviously scout them and just get them onto objectives. Maybe you're doing cleanse. In fact, we've got a list now. Cleanse is one that you can do. Extend battle lines, secure no man's land. You know the kind of things that they could do. But there's quite a lot of secondaries that they can get done that aren't just related to the no man's land. Assassination, as we mentioned with the one of the stratagems, potentially. I mean, even without the stratagem, they still could just demolish a unit with the leader in. Not a problem. They can do further afield objectives, like storm hostile objective as an example, overwhelming force. No prisoners as well is quite an easy one for them if they do get hold of a unit. That is probably the most problematic part for the Genestealers, is getting hold of a unit. It's not massively difficult, but if you whiff your rolls, then all of a sudden they're getting targeted and they're going. That's the kind of problem then. Pros and cons wise, so we've got the Scout 8-inch move, which is lovely. They've got an 8-inch movement on top of that, so they're pretty rapid as far as infantry go. They've got lots of attacks, 4 per model, which is nice. Weapon skill 2+ and reroll in 1s, also very nice. They're very rarely missing with that 40 attacks. Natural leader to gain the devastating wounds ability, which we didn't even include in the math stats earlier on, because that was obviously before we spoke about synergy. But when you've got dev wounds on top of that, there's no saves whatsoever. So those Terminators in particular, with their in-run saves or their 2+ armor save, don't worry about it. They're going to ignore them. Of course, they're not mortal wounds, but I mean, it wouldn't matter anyway because they're they're 1 damage weapons anyway. 5+ invulnerable save, which is nice. So AP of weapons doesn't really matter when they're being targeted. They've got the Vanguard Invader keyword for the detachment and the 2 wounds, not 1. Nice. As far as cons go, well, they're competing with infiltrator units. I know these aren't infiltrators, but they're competing with your Von Ryan's Leapers, Lictors, the Death Leaper, all those kind of units, the Neuro Lictor. They're kind of competing in those in that bracket now, and a lot of people tend to like those kind of units. What was the other one? There is another one, I'm sure there is. No, maybe that is it. I can't remember. And then you've even got other units that are just rapid that like to get into the no man's land, like a Horus Vex, for example. Those monsters. So there's a lot of competition for the kind of role that they're doing. So it all depends on your taste, really. For me, I really like the Genestealers, but some people would just prefer to take the newer, shinier models. I mean, these are a new model, in fact. These are a new 10th edition version of the model. But of course, we've had Genestealers in the Tyranids faction for years and years and years. Where were we? We're in the cons. They've only got a 5+ save with toughness 4. Yes, they've got a 5+ invulnerable save, but it is just 5+, and that's it. With toughness 4 on top, they will go down if they do get targeted, like most things do, but it's a lot easier to take them down, especially with standard bolt guns, because they're only toughness 4. And 2 wounds doesn't necessarily last. It is better, but it won't necessarily last. So let's get on to the Planet 40k rating for the Genestealers today. Loads of attacks, scout, I like all that kind of stuff. It fits my playstyle nicely. The nerf to their ability, I think, has made them suffer slightly, made them less selectable in some people's eyes. And it also depends on the detachment, of course. If you're playing the Vanguard Onslaught detachment, then they're probably a 4 to a 4.5. But as an overall unit to go in any of the 6 detachments, you've got to kind of penalise slightly. They can't be used, well, they can be used, but they're not going to be as effective in other detachments. So for today, I'm going to be going with the Planet 40k rating of 3.5 out of 5.